Elizabeth Cady Stanton on the left and Lucretia Mott on the right met in London in 1840 as delegates to the World Anti-Slavery Convention. Both were denied seats. As they spoke about the lack of women's rights, they became allies. Women couldn't vote, couldn't get jobs in certain fields. When they did find work, they were paid less than a man who would at the same job. They also weren't allowed to keep any wages earned, weren't allowed to own anything such as property rights. Girls belonged to their dads until they were married. Then they belonged to their husband. In colonial times, unmarried women had the same legal rights as men until marriage. However, customs were that they married early. 8 years later, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott reunited and met another woman named Susan B. Anthony. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony called for the Seneca Falls Convention in Seneca Falls, New York, on July 1848 to discuss the social, civil, and religious condition and rights of women. Seneca Falls was the genesis for the women's rights movement. Elizabeth Cady Stanton presented the Declaration of Sentiments and Resolutions, which is based on the American Declaration of Independence, which called for equality with men before the law in education and employment. After the big movement, women were gradually allowed to speak in public, something forbidden in the past. Some states created laws that protected the rights of married women, which granted them to own property in their name, keep their earnings, and have guardianship of their children in case of divorce. The women's suffrage lasted for 70 years. In 1869, Wyoming granted suffrage to women in hopes to attract more states, but they were outnumbered by men 6-1. In 1872, Susan B. Anthony was arrested for trying to vote. 20 years later, in 1893, Colorado was the second state to grant women the right to vote. Western states gradually let women vote. In 1912, not one eastern state gave women the right to vote. Because of Susan's militant tactics, she was forced to resign. In 1913, Alice Paul organized the National Women's Party, which engaged in huge hunger strikes. In 1917, New York granted women the right to vote. In 1918, the House approved the 19th Amendment, which stated the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any other state on the account of sex. In June 1919, Senate approved the amendment. If it wasn't for these brave and persevering women, we wouldn't be where we are today. After all, we
started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now the whole team here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now my whole team here. Started from the bottom, now we're here. Started from the bottom, now